Hello and welcome everybody to another episode of Strickland. I'm your host Shwin and this episode 577. I'm joined as always by my co-host Stacy. That is at StacyPatton89 on Twitter. Stacy, how are you doing?
Doing pretty well. Coming off a victory, so that's good. Happy St. Patrick's Day. Shout out to who was the last Irish Nick?
The last Irish pick?
Irish Nick.
I don't know that we've ever had one.
Oh, we've definitely had one.
Luke Longley had red hair. Have we? I don't remember.
Now we definitely have. DeBusschere was Dutch, I think, right? Well, okay. The president of the Knicks from 1946 until 1974 was Ned Irish. Shout out Ned Irish.
Congrats to Ned Irish. A true Nick and Irishman. One of the few. All right.
We're not here to
talk about. Say it again.
Doug McDermott. There we go. Sorry.
Doug McDermott. Yeah, I guess maybe he's Irish. Who knows? All right. Well, we're not here to talk about who was Irish on the Knicks. We're here to talk about the current Knicks, none of whom are Irish to my knowledge. But before we do that, I do have to let you know this is your weekly reminder that you can subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Strickland. You subscribe to the $6 tier that gets you access to Strickland, this podcast that I host every Friday with Prez. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, a podcast hosted by Andrew Steele, a.k.a. Doug, along with Zach Blatter, and you get access to the Strickland Discord, where you get to talk to other patrons as well as the site staff. If you subscribe to the $9 tier, you get access to Strickland NFL, which you get to this podcast with NFL. That's what the Constantine Mechikos and Luca. You also get access to Takes from Obvious Bozos, podcast hosted by myself and YC, where we talk more about basketball. It's a wonderful time. And if you do this, if you do that, then I don't have to do any more of these ad reads, which would be a great help to all involved. And thank you to our sponsor, FanDuel. FanDuel provides all of your betting needs, whatever you're into. The NCAA tournament starts tomorrow. Some would say it started last night, but I don't subscribe to that point of view. The NCAA tournament starts tomorrow. It should be fun. And if you're interested in betting on it, FanDuel has you covered. Okay. So the Knicks did win their fourth in a row last night. They beat the now 14 games in a row. A 14-game in a row losing streak, Indiana Pacers, with the worst record in the league. They took care of business against them without Jalen Brunson, which was good to see. That came on the heels of a less than resounding victory over the Golden State Warriors on Sunday, which had many people very upset because they did not win by 30 and punk the Warriors, who, to be fair, had basically nobody playing for them. And they finished up their road trip with a win on, was it Saturday night or Friday night in Indiana, and Wednesday night they beat Utah in Utah, another game where they fell behind and came back and took care of business. So they are on a 4-game winning streak. How you view the winning streak, I guess, depends on whether you're a glass half full or a glass half empty type person. I personally was fine with it. I think if you look at the Knicks schedule, they've been traveling a lot the last couple of weeks. And those road trips, no matter like who you're playing, I think towards the end everybody talks about it, right? That they can be difficult to kind of see out. So I think there was some lethargy that creeped into their performances there. The game against Indiana, to be fair, they didn't have Karl Anthony Towns. They didn't have Josh Hart, and they won that game. So they haven't necessarily played with the full deck in all these games either. But it was good to see that they found ways to pull these games out. And ultimately, they're taking care of business that they need to take care of. So, have they been perfect performances? No. And last time me and you talked, we talked a lot about the starting lineup and the concerns about its performance. And I think all those concerns persist. There's no doubt about that. But overall, the team is what it is. They're a very good team. This is a team that has a top 5 net rating for the season over the last 27 games since that 2-9 stretch. They have the best net rating in the league. They have the 6th best offensive rating in the league. They have the best defensive rating in the league by I want to say by 2.7 points. They have 5.4 defensive rating. The Celtics are second with 108.1 defensive rating. They are playing at a contender level right now. And, the thing about basketball games is they're 48 minutes. You don't get extra points for blowing the team out in the first quarter, and then it stays at a 25-point game the rest of the way. It doesn't really matter how you get there. It matters. I mean, it does matter how you get there. I guess that's not appropriate, but, over that many games, which is basically a third of the season, right? 27 games is effectively a third of the season. If you're playing at that level, and this is a stretch, right, that includes destroying the Spurs, who are number 2 in net rating over that same time period, and currently have the 2nd best record in the NBA. You're talking about a team that beat Denver twice and absolutely smoked them in Denver. They have quality wins on their resume. They smoked Boston in Boston. They have a lot of good wins this season. This is not the same thing as last year, where it was like, well, they're really good at taking care of business against the teams they should beat, but the teams that are kind of supposed to be in their weight class, they look really bad against. And that has not been the case this year, aside from the Detroit games. So if you're really, really worried about Detroit, there's something I can say to you right now to probably make you feel better about that. Because those games, quite frankly, have not been competitive enough. And maybe Detroit is just kryptonite for the Knicks. I don't fully believe that. I do think they're a bad matchup for the Knicks in some ways, but I think the Knicks can win a series against them. But forgetting that aside, I don't want to take moral fucking victories here either, but they lost by 3 to Oklahoma City. That's a game Mitchell Robinson didn't play, and I know Oklahoma City had some guys out too, but that was a really, really competitive game. It was a fun game, and I felt much better about the Knicks after that game than I did after any of these last 4 wins. And I think it just speaks to this team has shown when they play the best teams in the NBA that they are in that weight class. And, they have, I guess you don't count the cup final, but they've won the season series against the Spurs. They've won the season series against the Cavs. They have 1 game left against Boston. This time, obviously, they'll have Tatum. If they win that, they'll have won the season series against Boston. They have 1 more against OKC. Let's see what they do there. So they still have some tests here where you can, I guess maybe see, maybe that'll either confirm whether you believe in them or don't believe them. But to date, I think they're playing really well. And again, the 48 minutes, it's not perfect every night, but at the end of it all, for the full season, for sections of the season, really aside from that 2-9 stretch, they've profiled as every bit a contender as anybody else in the NBA. And I get the frustrations, but I think can't let frustration get the best of us. And I think people, Knicks fans especially, let's remember how fucking terrible the Knicks were for the better part of 2 decades. It's okay to not freak out about the margin of victory every single night. It's the regular season. Weird things happen all the time. And a weird thing happened against the Warriors, and they came back and won anyway. And a weird thing happened against the Jazz, and they came back and won anyway. And that's just kind of the name of the game. And, I think they've acquitted themselves well, and all the metrics do too. So I'm encouraged by what I've seen. I like what I've seen from this team. And, we'll see where it goes. They still have a couple of easy games here in a row, relatively easy games before the schedule picks back up. But they're well on their way to a 50-win season again. And it looks right now they're very good chance of at least being the 3 seed, if not the 2 seed in the East.
Yeah, I mean, it's you hate to justify it, right? So, but I don't think it's crazy to say, yeah, like they're getting bored, right? Or they're not going to show up for every game. And we talk about tanking teams, but these guys are NBA players, and especially on those tanking teams, they are the ones fighting to showcase that I should stay on this team next year, or if there's other teams watching, I have some potential, right? I mean, they don't want to just lose. If you're on the court, you don't want to just lose. So your career's affected. So um, you know that said, the Knicks should still beat these teams, but it's up and down because the Knicks, frankly, are I think it's almost like you said, they're probably going to get either the 2 or the 3 seed. I don't think they're super. They didn't have home court advantage against Boston last year, and they won. In general, then they had home court advantage in the conference finals. They've had it against Indiana the last 2 years, and they lost. So I think that's a real thing that people need to accept, that this is a team that's been in the playoffs multiple years. I think I brought up the same thing when the 2-9 stretch happened, and I think you were right, that cannot excuse how pathetic they were at times. I mean, that's a fair word to use, wouldn't you say, during that stretch?
Yeah, absolutely. They were pathetic for sure.
So I think that I'm not trying to use it as a hand, as a wand to say that, yeah, this is a great team. They already know where they're going to be. They're just saving themselves. I'm not using that to hand wave all concerns, but I do think this is qualitatively different from then, because over the last month or two, they've been playing like a contender. They showed up against the Spurs. I know a lot of people didn't like that Lakers game. We can talk about this more, but a lot of what I noticed about that Lakers game is when they face someone, because they don't have a ton of great perimeter defenders, they've been intelligent about how they help, how they trap. And that really allowed, especially against Oklahoma City and San Antonio, that allowed Bridges and OG to feast. That's also partly because the primary initiators, the guys that are doubling on OKC and Wemby and SGA, they're not elite processors. And but Luka is, and a lot of the doubles are coming in the middle of the floor. So Luka, I think, is just kind of a bad matchup for the Knicks, and it is possible. I think outside of OKC, maybe they're the worst matchup for the Knicks in the West. If we get to the finals, but obviously it worked against Jokic, and he's maybe the best he's a historically good processor. But that was something, and what I'll add to that is, yeah, like we can shit on Halliburton all we want. The last 2 years, he is the one who's put the Knicks out of the playoffs, elite processor. But overall, it almost seems like sim to end of season. And there's still things you want to learn. You want to learn about new groupings. You still have these new additions, Alvarado and, Sohan, they're not going to probably go to too much. But different guys get hot at different times, experimenting with more lineups. So it's not that this last month is completely unimportant, but you can tell, you can understand why the players are kind of like, yeah, just get me to the playoffs, man. This isn't a game against Utah, isn't a life or death situation.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I do think there's some lethargy that just sets in. It's natural. It's not just the Knicks that go through this. Every team goes through it, it's kind of funny. You actually see the teams that are surging the most right now. And yes, you have the Spurs, but I also think some of that is the naivety of being young, right? There's this young team. They're the first time they're doing it together. And
that was very poetic. That sounded like an 1800s Jane Austen novel or something. The naivety of being young.
That's it is. I actually have no idea, but I think it's they're locked in a different way for a different reason, and that's fine. That's good for them. I'm not, and they're obviously very good. So this is not dismissing what they're doing. It's more I can understand why they're maybe a little bit more locked in, game to game, quarter to quarter, whatever.
It's also not just
But
naivety, right? Like Stephen Castle is playing; he wants a max, right? So, like that's still on the table for him. He's on his rookie deal,
and he's trying to establish himself. Like if Diawara was as good right now as like Castle was, he'd be going crazy right now, and we'd be like, "Holy shit, this is amazing!" And honestly, some of these blowouts are like these games that have been tight. They probably wouldn't even be tight because he'd be going nuts in these like second and third quarters or something, and you'd be like, "Oh, we're up 25. This is awesome." He's obviously not at that level right now, so separate conversation, its own thing. But yeah, I definitely think that's like a real thing that happens. Teams around the league, but a lot of these teams that are surging, like I said, the Spurs are their own thing. But you look at a lot of these teams, right? It's like, oh, it's the Lakers who finally like got their shit together a little bit. I still think they're fake. This is exactly what they did last year. I do not buy their defense in the playoffs. I do not buy anything about that, really. I think they are a first round exit all the way. And then I think, you look at other teams around the league, like all these teams that are kind of like trying to stay out of the play in the East, they're all picking it up. And it's like, okay, well, you're picking it up because you need to win these games and you're motivated and there's no fucking around anymore. And, you kind of cap that sense of urgency is there every single night. And I think that benefits them in some ways. You look at Atlanta, you look at Orlando, you can go on Toronto, other teams, like, they're battling for that. Charlotte is another one. Charlotte's been surging for a while, though, so I think they're a little bit different. But the point is, like, I think a lot of different factors play into this stuff. Anyway, setting that aside, I do think that, like, look, the 2-9 stretch you mentioned earlier, it was terrible. It was awful. They look pathetic. Like, there's no really other way to phrase it, as you kind of put earlier. And it culminated in it is the most embarrassing loss of the season, that loss to Dallas, because not only did you lose to this team that had I think they had like 7 guys out or whatever the hell it wasn't close. You're down, they were down, like 25 at halftime or something. And I think the closest they got the game was to I want to say 17 at one point in the second half. Like, it was just a pathetic performance. It was not competitive. And it was at the end of that stretch. And so, that was really bad. I also think it needs to be said, I don't know, you look at these teams that have gone to the Cup final in the last, so now there's been 3 years of this. The 3 teams that have won the Cup are the Lakers, the Bucks, and now the Knicks. And all 3 of those teams in the immediate aftermath of the Cup have suffered. And I do think part of that is and actually it's funny because if you look at teams that lose the Cup final, they actually do fine. They're okay in the aftermath of the Cup. And I think there's something to be said of there is an emotional letdown factor there that is hard, I think, to grasp if you're not in the locker room, you're not playing, you're not a player. Because no matter what anybody says about it, the good thing about the Cup that I've noticed is, obviously at the end of the year, if the Knicks lose in the first round, we're not going to be like, well, they won the NBA Cup though, so what a great season. We're going to be like, oh, that fucking sucked. But the NBA Cup was nice, but whatever. So it's not to say it salvages your whole season or something, but in the moment of the Cup, those players and those teams, you watch those games, they're very competitive. Teams take them very seriously. It has the energy of a playoff game, albeit not a playoff series, which makes it very different. And you can't deny that it feels like a higher stakes thing. And I think it's very natural for a team to win that. And then 2 days later, because there's no break. It's not like you win the NBA Cup, you get a week off, which I think they should seriously consider. But you win the NBA Cup, and then literally 2 nights later, the Knicks are on the front end of a back-to-back against the fucking Pacers in Indiana. It's not easy to get up for that. And the Knicks, they won that game, but they were terrible for most of that game, really, until other than the minutes that Tyler Kolek played, they were basically not good. And then they lose to Philly, and then they kind of get their shit together. They win a few games. But you could tell in that stretch, even when they were winning, they won against Cleveland, they won against the Pelicans, they won against the Hawks. They were sloppy defensively, and they were getting by because the offense was still kind of humming and scoring at a high clip. But once that went away, they just fell off a cliff. And I just think it's hard. I do think it's a very difficult thing to be wait, we just won this thing. I should be able to celebrate this thing. And instead, I have to go to fucking Indianapolis to play Andrew Nemhard. Like, it's just not an easy thing. And it's not even to make an excuse for it, because ultimately, that's the situation. Like, if you wanted to win the cup and the Knicks clearly wanted to win the cup, then it's incumbent upon you to then, prepare yourself for the aftermath of it. And I do think the Knicks did to some extent, but clearly there's something there. There is something there. I can't speak to what it is, but I do feel very strongly there's some type of emotional, mental letdown there where it's like, wait, we just won a thing. Like, it'd be weird, right? If you won, like, this is why, like, if you look at European soccer, and I don't know how they do in European basketball, I'm assuming it's the same. The cups run concurrent with the season, and the cup finals, in most cases, don't end until the end of the season. Like, they're at the end of a season. So there isn't really an emotional letdown because you're building towards the end the entire way. And I don't know how the NBA wants to reconcile it. I don't know if anybody thinks I'm full of shit, but like, I feel very, very strongly about this, that there is an emotional letdown factor there. That's hard to guard against, no matter how professional you are, no matter how dedicated your players are. And, you either need to make the stakes of the cup matter more. Like, I don't know, if you win the NBA Cup and you win 50 plus games, you get automatic one seed in your conference or something, whatever it is. I'm just making up some bullshit. They need to make it matter more in some capacity. And I also think they need to, or they need to consider like stretching it out and maybe making it closer towards the end of the season, or stretching it out over the course of the season, which is my preference. Anyway, I did want to mention that because I think that 2-9 stretch is very interesting now, especially looking at how they've bounced back from it and looking at how they were playing before it, right? Because before it, they were 23-9, not including the cup final. And they were playing really well, right? Like, we were all very, very happy. We're like, oh, this team is obviously a contender. This is great. Then they had that 2-9 stretch and we're like, well, this sucks. I hate this team. Let's see what happens. And then now they've gone back to being, okay, everything says the team is a very, very high-end contender. So what explains that 11-game blip? I don't know. Maybe I'm full of shit, but I do think there's something there.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting hypothesis. I think in general, there's also, they have played, I think a criticism is, and this is, I think, probably not too out of line with a lot of other contenders. They do play down to their opponent, but they have generally played up. Detroit is a striking exception. But they played Oklahoma City much tougher, obviously, than last year. They had the collapse against San Antonio, but the other two games they've been pretty good, including the Cup. The Lakers wasn't a collapse, right? The Nuggets, they've blown out the Sixers. So they've generally varied. That was very different from the Tibbs there, or it certainly felt different, where they play the same way every night, but because there isn't a whole lot of variety in those big games, they're getting their ass kicked. So I think that there's just something to the idea that one, there's more experimentation. Two, we're talking about on the Knicks end, right? Like you play Oklahoma City and San Antonio, and then you got to get up for a game against Indiana, right? Especially you put everything you had in those games. You said it's kind of an emotional letdown. I'll just say, like, there was an emotional investment. You borrowed and you got really hyped for that game, and when it's over, the next one feels, it's tough to bring that same level of intensity. But it goes both ways too. If you are on one of these teams and you're playing the Knicks and you're a young player, especially, this is oftentimes it's on national TV. I understand people get upset if you say, well, teams will play their best players, they'll rest the best players and then play them against the Knicks, or they seem to recover Medical Square Garden or whatever. But a lot of those games are nationally advertised or nationally broadcast. It's a high profile, not just high profile team because Knicks, but because they're actually one of the top teams in the league. So you would understand it, right? Like, I mean, put yourself in our shoes a couple years ago, when the Knicks weren't that good, or when they're still coming up. I wouldn't have wanted Quickly or Randall to sit against a team like, that first year, who was the best team? Like against the Lakers at that time, or Giannis, right? You want to see, what can you guys do? Can we get more information? And even when they're tanking, right, you would want to see, like, RJ shouldn't be sitting, the year before, right? You want to see what can he do. And those players themselves are going to be super motivated, because that's an opportunity to show, like, against the best, I can do this. Yes, I'm young and inconsistent and still developing, but I have these proof of concept games. So they're going to come hard at you too. And the Knicks, that's always an excuse, right? We're that other team's Super Bowl, but they do have more of a target on their backs than they have had definitely any year before last year, but even including last year. Shwin, you're on mute. You're on mute, Shwin.
I get why, and I know you're not saying this. I get why there's like an idea of this team being similar to last year's, and we want to attach characteristics of last year's team to this year's one, and a lot of it is justified in the sense of you bring back really 8 of your rotation players from last year, right? If you include Shamet, you brought back your starting 5, and you brought back Mitch and Deuce and Shamet. There was no major changes, right? Your biggest offseason move was signing Gershon Yabusele, who got traded for Jose Alvarado at the deadline. And then your other signing was Jordan Clarkson, who until recently hasn't been in the rotation. So, like, it makes sense why there is that inclination, that tendency. But I think the highs of this year's team have been better. I think they've generally played a more consistent brand of basketball. And this is hard for people to say that aren't watching every night, like Knicks fans are. But, like, there are games this year where I'm like, oh, wait, who's on the floor right now? Like, I'm like, you're trying to figure out, like, what the lineups are, and because he's mixing and matching so much, and he's doing it so much more frequently. Whereas last year, like, I could have told you who was on the floor just based on the time in the game. Like, oh, there's, fucking 3 minutes left in the third quarter. I know exactly who's on. I know exactly who's on to start the second. I know exactly who's on to close each fucking half and game. Like, we knew that stuff like the back of our hands because Tibbs was such a creature of consistency. And I think that is ultimately the difference this year. And it's why, like, whether they do it or not, right? Whether they make the finals and win a finals, finally get out of the conference and get to a finals, and maybe they win. Whether they do that or not, it's very hard for me to feel like they're not better prepared for every possible outcome and situation in a playoff series than they were last year. I think there's a much better understanding of, like, what each player on your roster is capable of. I think Mike Brown deserves a ton of credit. And the things he deserves credit for, very specifically to me, are this. I think he has very directly had to deal with putting out some fires in the locker room, right? I think he's challenged guys directly. Karl Anthony Towns and him, it was obvious that they were not on the same page for large parts of the season. And now, Cat, we will talk about him shortly, but, like, I think he's arguably playing, if not the best ball of his career, definitely the best ball he's played in New York. If both ends of the floor, that overall contribution, I think he's been tremendous. You look at a guy like Josh Hart, who started off the season and was, like, not happy about his role and was vocal about it. And yes, he has gone back to the starting lineup that we have all these questions about, but Josh Hart is 100% right, committed. There's no worries about him. We're not sitting there like, oh, is he going to quit on the coach or anything? Like, there's none of that. And, I think the way that he managed a guy like Jordan Clarkson was in the rotation, right? No question about it. He was in the rotation to start the season. And he was really bad for, like, the last month or so that he was in the mix. And he pulled the plug on it. Just took him out. And then at various points of late, he's given him another opportunity. He's kept him engaged, and now he's back in the mix. And Mo Diawara was not in the mix, right? 51st pick, and we were all kind of like, okay, well, that just makes sense, even if it's a little bit frustrating. But he's gotten chances. I think he's at over 500 minutes now for the season. So like these are these to me, and recently he's kind of, I don't know if he's challenging McCall or what exactly is going on there. But I think that he has he does have a very different approach to Tibbs, and I think that approach has yielded some dividends that are good. It's allowed him to explore the depths of the roster in a way that Tom Thibodeau never did or would. And I think that has the potential to serve him and us as Knicks fans very well when we get into playoff basketball, especially hopefully second round and beyond, where games and series become more chess matches and you got to find marginal gains. I think all the stuff that he's done, all the work he's done in the regular season is good. By the way, all the starters' minutes are down this year. All of them. Brunson, Cal Bridges, Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns, and OG Anunoby. Last year, 3 of those guys were, among the leaders in minutes per game. And Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, and OG. I think Josh Hart led the league in minutes per game, and Mikal Bridges led the league in total minutes. I don't remember exactly what the difference was there, but it's a stark difference. Even like I think it's easy to look at their number right now. They're 45 and 25. Last year, I think they were 44 and 26. I think it's easy to look at that and be like, well, it's not that much different. It's basically the same thing. But I think when you peek under the hood, you feel more confident in the overall operation here. And look, let's be honest, like Tom Thibodeau, yeah, he got us to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think it'd be very hard to say that he was very inspiring throughout a lot of that process. And ultimately, that's why the front office made the call they did. And look, we'll see what Mike Brown can do. But yeah, right now, I'm definitely encouraged by what I see. And I think it's absurd for anybody like fucking Vince Goodwell, who apparently allegedly covers the team, to suggest stuff like, oh, well, it's basically the same as last year and the vibes are bad. It's like, I don't know, dude. The vibe seemed pretty awesome yesterday when Jose Alvarado slapping Josh Hart's ass during the post-game interview. Like, seems like the vibes are okay, actually. But, yeah, I don't know. I just feel better about where this team is placed, and I feel better about the work they've put in and just how everything has operated under the hood.
He 5-starred him too, by the way. That was not like a love tap. That was he felt it in the hot tub. Pause, right?
Yeah.
I think, yeah, I mean, also I talked about Bridges and Shamet. Shwin, it's not even that. You went into, I agreed with everything you said, but you don't have to watch this team too closely. If I told you before the season that the Knicks would be with a lineup with 2 players who I've told are complete defensive busts in Brunson and Cat, the Knicks would be 6th in defensive rating on March 18th, ahead of the Rockets, who are much more athletic, younger, and known for defense. The Timberwolves, great defensive coach, still have, if not the best rim protector in the league, one of the top 2 or 3. And the Magic, who defense has been their bread and butter. What would your response have been? That they're 6th?
I would probably say that that's something I'd be interested in.
Yeah, I almost went there. We use that one a lot. But that's it, right? And then offensive rating, they're still 3rd, behind only the team with the best offensive player in Denver, and in Boston, who's had a great year, very great coaching job. And so they're top. And the thing is, that was the kind of critique that was used about this team. One, that they're not balanced enough, right? That because of Cat and Brunson's presence on the floor, their defense leaked too much. The other criticism was they can't beat good teams. They can't beat the top teams. They were 0-10 against Boston, Cleveland, and Oklahoma City last year. San Antonio right now looks like a legitimate contender. It does not look certainly like last year where it was OKC and everybody else. San Antonio has beaten them, and they have an alien, and Castle himself is playing really well as well. They're playing excellent basketball, and in the middle of that stretch, the Knicks beat them, and they beat them for the cup, which was a game you said the Knicks really wanted it. The Spurs did too. And besides Oklahoma City, they look like the superior team to anyone who might come out of the West. And it's starting to look like Oklahoma City might not be a foregone conclusion in the same way it was last year. They've played Cleveland. It's been a weird series. I would like to see them face Cleveland again with Harden, but I think that they haven't shown that they're necessarily structural things. So really the only thing, the things that were used to critique the Knicks last year are now being ignored. They're imbalanced. They're not a lead in both aspects. They're not a lead on both sides of the floor. They are. They're not showing up against any top teams. They have a lot. And I'll get to the exception in a minute. And don't worry, I'm not going to go on another Detroit hate diatribe. And then it's all the things you mentioned, right? This was the trade-off the Knicks said they wanted to make. Instead of playing to win every game, we want to expand the rotation, try different things. And you've seen that, right? I don't have to reiterate what you said. The one argument you could make is there is one team still that has clearly dominated the Knicks in every regular season game. My response to that is that the Knicks proved they could beat them last year. They've proven even that the whole narrative of the regular season, you get dominated. They beat Boston, right? But that, I would at least say, compared to the other stuff that's just vibes talk, and it looks like you're just looking at their record, that is a legitimate thing. You weren't competitive with Detroit in 3 matchups. Fine. Forget injuries, forget all that. Like one time it should have been a competitive game. I believe that in the playoffs that they meet, it would not be the same. But I also think it would be a tough series. But yeah, it just feels intellectually dishonest. Not from everyone who's saying this. There are legitimate concerns about this team, but from a lot of people who are raising concerns, a lot of it feels like intellectual dishonesty. And he's getting, EPM defensive advanced stats in general are tough. So take them all with a grain of salt. But the fact that Cat is not only a plus defender, but a pretty damn good defender this year, says you have the 6th best defensive team by defensive rating in the league with 2 players who are considered defensively very subpar. And Bridges, the other guys, Hart has been much better defensively this year. But Bridges and OG haven't always had their A game. So that's a pretty big result there. And the last thing I'll say is, what really feels different, and this is a feelings ball. I accused, the national writers of going feelings ball, so I'm going with it too. It feels less dogmatic than with Tibbs. When he said situational, you were out until an injury or something that was an incredibly concerning amount of evidence.
An act of God.
Yeah, to bench Kemba took a long stretch of poor play. To bench Fournier took a long stretch of poor play. We know what happened with Elfrid Payton. He didn't do it till the playoffs, even though there was tons of evidence to suggest that Quickly or Rose were better fits with the starting lineup. I do actually get not starting Rose that year because the starting lineup was so Randall-centric that you wanted Rose to come in when Randall had to sit and to stagger them. But Quickly was just a much better fit. We don't have to relitigate that. But you said this, Brown makes tons of mistakes. But he's very rarely set in his. I don't want to say set. He changes his mind. He'll go back to Jordan Clarkson if he feels like the offense can use him. He'll have DOR out. He'll have DOR in. Then he'll say, "I want to try Sohan." But then when that doesn't work, he'll go back to DOR out. So it's experimentation, but it's also, there's this phrase, and I really apologize to my viewers to use like what I think has become a Silicon Valley like buzzword phrase. But strong opinions held loosely. So you commit to something.
Do you feel introspective about that?
Yeah, I feel very introspective. My head is growing into a massive egg because I rarely don't ever introspect. It's or I rarely introspect. But it's, he's willing to change his mind and he's willing to go back and that gives us more data. But it gives you some more confidence in a playoff series that he's not going to the word I think you always use was rigid. He certainly looks way less rigid. But now, does that come at the cost of maybe the Knicks? I wrote a whole article about this a few years ago after the Knicks lost the Hawks, the hedgehog and the fox. And, we don't have to rehash the whole article, but there's a trade-off, right? If you're very rigid, you have a very clear identity. If you're fluid, then sometimes you're like, what is my bread and butter? If you don't feel like you have a bread and butter, that's, you're maybe losing that, right? Maybe that's played into some of Brunson's struggles, right? Because he's trying to play so many different ways that, when he knew exactly what he was doing every single possession, it was different. But overall, you'd have to say this is what they wanted from the coaching change, and it's worked out, maybe in terms of wins. Yeah, I thought they could get 60 wins before this year. Maybe it's a little underwhelming, but the East has also been better than expected. Boston was not expected to be a great team. Cleveland was under expectations and has now come back with a force. And Detroit is way better than anyone thought. I like to shit on Detroit, but they're certainly way better than I thought they'd be. So, I think this is pretty much, I think I gave Brown a B-, after that 2-9 stretch or by the All-Star break. I bump that up to an A- right now. It's kind of what you wanted from this hire. Not perfect, but these are the kind of changes you wanted to see.
Yeah, I think that's 100% accurate. A change I don't know that we wanted to see, but maybe is a good thing. I'm not sure if it's a good thing. We'll see I'm not sure. So, the general notion is that, or the general belief is that Jalen Brunson is 100% the best player in the Knicks. And to be clear, I don't doubt that. I think there's something to be said of his playoff performances, his ability to deliver in crunch time consistently. Even this year, where it's felt like he's kind of been a little bit more up and down, especially lately, he's delivered in crunch time situations. And I think there's something to be said for that. But, Nick, who has not always gotten the benefit of the doubt and who has been criticized plenty prior to getting to New York, upon arrival in New York, certainly after the playoffs last year, throughout the start of this season, is Karl-Anthony Towns. And I think sometimes it's been warranted, but sometimes it's also been excessive. I truly did not understand the criticism he was getting after the postseason last year. I thought he got scapegoated, quite honestly. I did not think that he was the biggest or even close to the biggest problem the Knicks had in that Pacers series. And I'll be quite honest, I thought Brunson's defense was one of the biggest problems they had in that series. Now, credit to Jalen Brunson, his defense, certainly over this last couple of months, has been much better than it was to start the year and through the middle of the season. But we will see how it holds up in the playoffs. But Towns' defense has been, legitimately good this year by most metrics. If I'm not mistaken, I believe right now, Karl-Anthony Towns. So if you look at EPM, the actual EPM this season, Karl-Anthony Towns is the Knicks' best. He's their best player, effectively. He leads the team in overall EPM. He's in the 95th percentile. Anunoby and Brunson are in the 92nd percentile. He's only in the 93rd percentile in offensive EPM, which is probably it's among his lowest for his NBA career, if not the lowest. I'll look it up in a second. He also has the 5th best defensive EPM on the team. Number 1 is Ariel Hukporty, so I'm not even going to count that. That's obviously not real. But Mitchell Robinson is after that 93rd percentile. OG is second, 92nd percentile, and then Bridges in the 91st percentile on defensive EPM. Towns is right after that, 86th. And all the numbers, forgetting the advanced nerd stuff, even the raw numbers for Towns are really good. Over the course of the season, the defense it's 2.5 points better with him off the floor It's a 110.9 defensive rating with him on the floor, 108.4 defensive rating with him off the floor. The offense has been great, though. 119.3 with him on, 112.1 with him off, 4.6 net rating. But over the last 27 games, Towns, and I guess you can count Alvarado since he's now a legitimate rotation player, but of their starting group and certainly of the rotation guys that have been here the entire time, he's number one. So he has a plus 7.4 net rating. The defense is 104.6 on, 101.8 with him off, which just speaks to like how great the defense has been. Towns has a 120.3 offensive rating with him on the floor, 110 with him off. It's a plus 10.3 difference on just offensive rating, plus 7.4 net. After that, it's of the main rotation players. Deuce is actually number one at plus 22.2, but he's only played 75 minutes. So, I'm not going to count that. But after that, OG's plus 6.1 net. And this is where it's like, don't take net rating as gospel, but it is interesting. After that, Josh Hart minus 3.9, Bridges minus 7.1, Brunson minus 10, which is the worst net rating on the team, by the way. Now, worth mentioning, again, the actual on-court rating of Brunson on the floor during this time is still very good. They're plus 9.8 with Brunson on the floor. So it's not like they're getting blitzed in his minutes. Mikal is plus 9.9. Josh Hart is plus 11.1. So they're winning their minutes, but they're not winning them as much as when these guys are off. And I think it's more of it says it doesn't. I don't think it's a criticism necessarily of Brunson, but I do think it's an interesting dynamic, and I feel it speaks to what we talked about throughout a lot of last season, and now is like whatever criticisms exist of Karl Anthony Towns, and there are plenty, some legit, some not, but like the guy just existing on the floor changes the game for your team. Like his floor as a player is so high in the way he impacts the game, particularly in the offensive end of the floor. He's also a great rebounder. He's been a great rebounder in New York, and he's he's carried that over throughout the season. He's leading the league in double doubles this year. So like that speaks to it. And that's obviously a huge part of defense, but his actual defense has been great too. But even his offense, like, the shooting has not been up to par for his career, but like he's not getting treated like a non-shooter. Watch how close teams generally tend to guard him, So, I think there's a legitimate argument that this season, I'm just talking about performance to date this season, that Towns has been the Knicks' best player. I would argue that. I don't think that's like a knock on anybody, really. But I thought he's played at a high level this year. And, more than anything, it's like, isn't that what you want? Like your two best players are, I just think it shouldn't be used as a knock against Brunson. And I do think he's had to do some yeoman's work, lifting up some of these lineups that Brown puts out there with him when he's sitting other starters that are not great. He's had a lot of weird minutes with like Huckporty and Hart and Diawara and stuff, and you're like, how are they supposed to score? So there's some stuff going on there, but like Towns, independent of that, has been great. And honestly, he probably deserves more credit and respect for what he's done this year than he's gotten from Knicks fans and the media. Like, I think he should be a shoo-in for all NBA. I don't know that's the case. Because I think he's been tremendous.
Yeah, him and Bridges. So him and Bridges have been the most scrutinized Knicks over the last 2 years. Brunson is starting to get there, and I do think some of the pushback or some of the criticism has been going back to Becky Hammond stuff, which I think by this point, if you haven't bought the idea that Brunson can lead a championship team, I just don't think you ever will. But Cat and Bridges have been the most scrutinized, and I will say Cat has been the most unfairly scrutinized. There's a lot of reasons for it. They are very big departures from the Tibbs identity. Very ironic since Cat played for Tibbs, and they had maybe a falling out or some difficulties the first time, and then they seem to be very kumbaya last year. I certainly don't think Cat wanted Tibbs gone, but they're very much a departure from the kind of players that we had, right? Like, much more physical, more paint oriented. Cat is paint oriented as well, but he's also stretch five and a little bit more of a finesse player, although he can be physical in the post as well. And then Bridges is a pure finesse player, right? So that's another thing, right? Like, he's bigger than Dante. I think he's objectively a better player, even with Dante being perhaps a quick trigger, deeper range, better shooter. Like, Bridges is a better defender, but that kind of vibe of Dante's toughness and the hard edge he played with wasn't exactly, that's not Bridges' MO. So I think, and of course, those were the biggest trades we've made, right? And the immediate results weren't like OG was the biggest trade, but the immediate that was an immediate inflection. We go 14-2 after the OG trade. Whereas now that expectation is set, it's unclear, did Cat and Bridges actually improve the team? And then there's context with losing Hartenstein and all that. But, I do think he's gotten a lot of unfair criticism. I think that, one, we didn't mention this in, what we just talked about with kind of the national dialogue, but there were, I think there are Knicks fans who are very loyal to Tibbs. And I think there's been criticism of Cat because of that, because it's like, Tibbs wants his rim protector and we traded for this guy who isn't that. And, Tibbs was the scapegoat, but we constructed a lineup. I have more sympathy for that. For the criticism for Knicks fans who were very loyal to, I get it, right? Tibbs was essential to this team. He, when he came here, it was rubble, gutted and rudderless, if you will, right? And he brought it, he helped, like the fact that him and Randall, for that matter, if the Knicks don't win a ring, that they won't be part of that is sad. And so I kind of get it from that standpoint.
I don't get it. I don't actually get it because
no, I mean, I get the emotional part of it. I obviously disagree. I'm on your side, but the point is, they did, you can say, well, we weren't supposed to be Boston, and we did, and he was the coach, and he's brought a lot to this team. Fine. The national media is where I have more of an issue with it because it feels fundamentally intellectually dishonest. Before, it was all the Tibbs minutes criticism. They can't win with playing Tibbs style. They're not that good because they just try hard every night. They're not, and then now they're trying to, and I think Cat is the guy who's taken the brunt of that. And on the floor, he has his quirks and mannerisms that people that are, I don't want to say an acquired taste, but something you have to learn to accept. Complaining about fouls, falling down after drives, those kind of things. Stupid fouls, right? I think he's gotten better at those things. I think there's a remarkable amount of self-awareness that he's taken on, where he's taken on more of a playmaking role. He's reduced his usage after a career year, looking to pass out of drives way more. That speaks to, his character and his work ethic, and, what separates a talented player from a star, from a winning player. And I think Cat is a winning player, and that's something that's a criticism that was leveled at him, but it's tough to have that now. And his impact has been in many ways more than Brunson. I think the context, we've had similar discussion. We had a similar discussion, I think, on the Cord with Duren and Cade, and you were saying Duren was better than Cade for the beginning part of the year. And, I use this analogy of Randy Moss and Wes Welker, right? Wes Welker outproduced Randy Moss, but you can't separate the attention Randy Moss was drawing in the context. And I think that still matters. And I think at the end of the day, who does this organization think its best player is? It's Brunson. But there is something to be said about performing your role, and Cat's context isn't that much better. He does draw a lot of attention. He has struggled with injuries, and, he's also, for his position, he's on, not the biggest guy at center. He's not physically equipped the same way to, the kind of mobility that, a guy like Bam or, some of the centers have. he struggles and drop, but he's also not the most fluid guy laterally where he can switch. So, but he's made it work, and he's played really hard. There's not, and so in his role, I like Cat in his role. In his role, he has unquestionably been better than Brunson this year. I think with the context and with the track record, I'd still say Brunson, you're still going to give it to him. He's the guy I trust with the game on the line and in the playoffs. And he is the center of the solar system, but Cat is not Mars, right? Cat might be Earth, right? So Brunson is the center of the solar system, and Cat is what gives the solar system a special meaning. Maybe that's it. But yeah, I mean, it's been fascinating to watch, and he hasn't gotten his due, frankly, and a lot of the national conversation doesn't focus on that.
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry. So last year, Karl Anthony Towns had a plus 6.2 on-court rating, and a plus 5.6 on-off. Do you want to guess who had the best on-off and on-court rating on the team last year?
Deuce, right?
Nope. Close. But Cameron Payne. Cameron Payne led the team in on-court and on-off last year. This year, and by the way, last year, Brunson had a plus 2.1 on-court rating, minus 4.9 on-off. This year, for the full season, Karl Anthony Towns, plus 8.3 on-court rating, plus 3.4 on-off. Do you want to guess who has the best on-court and on-off so far this season?
Deuce or Cat?
It is actually Alvarado, but before that, I was Deuce. Alvarado has a plus 20.1 on-court rating, plus 14.4 on-off. I would expect those numbers to come down, but it wouldn't surprise me if he still leads the team in that category. Brunson for the season, is a plus 6.0 on-court rating and a minus 2.9 on-off. I bring all this up only to say that I think this is the entire thing. Cat is just an elite forward. And if you put some type of nominal point guard who understands how to run a pick and roll and feed him, and he just got to run the show for a little bit, it's completely fine. Not only will they be fine, they will thrive. They will thrive. That's why, if you look at the Knicks last year in the playoffs, guess of their main rotation pieces, right? Karl Anthony Towns, he was a minus 2.3 on off. All the starters were worse than him, basically. Brunson, worse. OG Anunoby, worse. Mikal Bridges, worse. Only better at plus 0.0 on off. Plus 0.6 on court. Towns, plus 0.0. Plus 0.0 on court rating.
And that it should be mentioned that he had the best backup.
Yes, correct.
Mitch. I mean, Deuce is maybe the next best, but yeah, so that's impressive.
Right. So I just think this speaks to Towns' impact I think centers in general, big men in general, have higher floors in terms of their overall team impact over the course of 48 minutes. I think that's always been the case, and generally tends to be true, because they can impact the game on both ends of the floor, and generally are responsible for impacting the game on both ends of the floor in a way that a guard is not going to be. Brunson I think his on-offs have been bad the last couple of years. I don't know that has much to do with him being a bad player. He's obviously not a bad player. But I do think it says something about him and Towns maybe not having the best chemistry. We've talked about that a lot. Brunson misses him on pick and rolls and pick and pops frequently, I would say. I honestly forget pick and roll. I don't even remember the last time they ran a real pick and roll. And I mean like Towns rolling to the rim. I see Alvarado get here, and all of a sudden Towns rolling to the rim. So what's the reasoning for that? But also, like, look, the starting lineup sucks. And they played most of their minutes together in the starting lineup. And I think Brunson gets punished for that more because he also has to carry lineups that feature more bench guys, whereas Cat gets to feature on lineups that are like, okay, we're gonna put a bench guy in, like a bench guy in, but that bench guy's gonna be the point guard, and we're gonna run everything through you, and also we're gonna have like OG on the floor, Mikal on the floor, Deuce on the floor, or whatever. Like you mentioned, two of our best players being, or at least by on court, on off, all that stuff, last couple of years having been Deuce and Mitchell Robinson. It says something about, I think that starting lineup, and also explains to some degree, I think, why a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns might be lapping Brunson in that kind of category. But I agree with you, and I stand by it. Like, I think Brunson's the best player. The Knicks clearly feel that Brunson is their best player. I am curious what people think after the season. I'm curious if people will re-examine their opinions of Karl-Anthony Towns, because all I've heard for the last year plus now, nearly 2 years now, since the trade, is how it was a win-win, and then it was like it was okay for both teams, and early in the season it was like, oh, the Timberwolves won the trade, and I couldn't disagree with them more. I think the Knicks absolutely fucking fleeced them. The only reason Towns was available is because of his contract and because of Minnesota's cap situation. The Knicks got a big man who, like, honestly, you could argue this season, it's not insane to be like Towns has been the best big man in the season if you count, the body of work, the fact that he has played games.
Over Jokic and Wemby? I mean, Wemby is still those guys will be over him for all NBA.
No, of course they will be. But I'm saying I don't think it's. I think at bare minimum you could argue he's the best big in the East. Who's this competition?
Bam had 83 points.
Oh, yeah, Bam can have 83 points. I'm just talking about overall impact.
Yeah,
based on the minutes load, games load, all that. Because I think Wemby has missed more time than him. Jokic has missed more time than him. Either way, he's definitely the best big man in the East to me. And the Knicks needed a center, so you got a center. Unequivocally, the best center you could have got at that time, you got. And you lost Dante. It sucks. Like, I'm sorry. Like, I think between Mikal, Landry, and then obviously Deuce, and now Deuce is going to be healthy again. Like, I mean, I would argue Deuce is better than Dante.
I could argue that Deuce was more consistent that playoffs, where yes, Dante's highlights got a lot. I mean, not highlights. He had big performances, and maybe Deuce doesn't have that ceiling. But Deuce was more consistent on defense. I wish we tried him more on Maxey, and he was consistently shooting the ball well. Now he's asked to do less, but Dante kind of had to take on a secondary playmaking role. But even at that point, it was debatable.
Even last year, Deuce was better. Like, I think Deuce is just a better player. I flat out think he's a better player than Dante DiVincenzo. Defensively, it's not even close. And that makes it clear cut to me. He's also a sniper. Maybe not as much of a sniper as Dante when you factor in.
He doesn't have the logo range. Yeah.
Yeah, the distance that Dante gets. But he's a sniper in his own right. He's a much better screener than Dante. Anyway, the point is, between those three guys, Mikal, Deuce, and Shamet, like, you're better at that position than you were before the trade too. And I understand that, like, Mikal's his own trade and whatever. But the point is, like, Dante was going to have a reduced role. You packaged him in with Randall to go get the best center available to on the market. I don't see how that trade could be viewed as anything but a win at bare minimum for the Knicks. And Towns' performance this year and last year, quite frankly, make it pretty clear cut to me. Does he have flaws as a player? Like, yeah, absolutely. And he does a lot of things that are frustrating. He leads the league. What do you have? Like 59 charges or whatever it was, leading the league this year, which is crazy. He does things defensively at times, even this season where you're like, Jesus, what the hell is going on there? Like all that is true. And yet, just because he's so talented, I don't think it really matters. And, there's also a lot to be said of like, I'm sorry, I much prefer having Karl Anthony Towns as a personality on my team than Julius Randle. Julius Randle was a really good Knick. I do not miss him. I remain very, very happy that we moved on from Julius Randle, and I did not find his personality viable
Seriously,
for a team that's
before
hoping
we
to go 4 rounds in the playoffs and win a championship. Like, I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. And on top of that, we have numerous instances of him treating his teammates shitty, super up and down play, super up and down emotionally. The Karl Anthony Towns experience to me as an Knicks fan has been good and fun, and I've enjoyed it. And I'm with you. I think he is a winning player, whatever that means to people. And I think there's plenty of reason to believe that with Towns, the Knicks can win a championship. And the numbers we talked about there, you could flat out argue that Towns is not the biggest problem when you get into the playoffs. Towns is not the guy that where it should be like, oh, let's name like the 3 biggest things we're worried about. I'm not sure that Karl Anthony Towns is even part of that conversation. I don't. I think his defense is definitely problematic at times, but I also think he's kind of okay on defense. I even thought last year he was kind of okay on defense. Like, yeah, there are moments where he just looks bad and he's goofy and he's a gigantic human being, so it can look weird and he's expressive. So, there's always things that go viral with him, but he's a hell of a player. And, if I'm looking ahead to the playoffs, I'm not really that worried about Karl Anthony Towns. That's just not one of my top 3 concerns. Like, it isn't. So, yeah, I don't know. I think Karl Towns definitely deserves more credit for what he's done this season, what he's done as a Knick, and he should be an All-NBA player without question to me this year.
Yeah, I think he will be. I don't know. Just because the production isn't, I think you'd have to watch the Knicks to see how much he's improved at the things that he gets criticized for. But it's also with the Randall Cat discussion, I don't think that's close. People would say, well, Randall gets doubles too, and he can shoot from outside too. Randall can't play the 5, and we lost Isaiah Hartenstein, and Mitch Robinson wasn't coming back. Like that alone, maybe Randall can. We, as much as both of us said we should have tried more Randall at the 5, and I think before we made the Cat trade, that's what we said. We don't do that a lot. I don't know how this is going to work. But even if you say Tibbs was wrong not to try that more, it's very difficult to say Randall at the 5 playing full time the way Cat has done would be at 86th percentile defensive AP.
It would be terrible. No, we don't. It'd be fucking terrible. Are you kidding me? It'd be fucking awful. Like Randall at the 5 defensively, anyway. You're not stopping anybody. You're just not. Like if you're worried about Brunson and Cat, like kind of one end on each end of your defense, could you imagine fucking Brunson and Randall on each end of your defense? You fucking kidding me? It'd be a disaster. And Randall's not as good of a rebounder as Karl Anthony Towns. No way. No way he's as good of a rebounder.
I think the one thing he's better at.
You talk about the shooting. Randall for his career, 33.2% from 3. Karl Anthony Towns, 39.7. This year, down year for Karl Anthony Towns, 36.6% from 3. Randall, sniper, 31.4% from 3. This is not close. This is a down year for Karl Anthony Towns. 54.9 EFG this season compared to 57.5 career. Julius Randle, above his career average this year, 53. Career, 51.4. Field goal percentage. Randle, 48.4% this year. Career, 47.3. Karl Anthony Towns, 49.2% from 3 this year, 52.1 career. You look at the true shooting percentage, again, it's not really close. 61.2 for Karl Anthony Towns and 59 for Julius Randle. Like, Towns, in a down year offensively, wipes him off the fucking map. Wipes him off the map as a scorer. And the one thing you give Randle over Towns, or at least I would give him over Towns, is the ability to create from a standstill, right? Like that ability to just create from a standstill, draw doubles, generate threes, like drive and kick type stuff. He 100% is better than at that than Karl-Anthony Towns. What that also means is that you have to dedicate a portion of your offense to derive value from Randall when he's on the floor with an Anthony Edwards, right? You have to dedicate usage to him having the fucking ball in his hands to create. And like, how useful is that? I don't know. I don't watch the Timberwolves enough. All I know is that I can have Karl-Anthony Towns just exist on the floor. Just go stand above the arc. Go stand there. And that immediately is something that defenses have to account for. Randall stands at the top of the arc, and teams are going to dare him to beat them. That does not happen with Towns. When is the last time you watched a team be like, you know what we're going to do today as our strategy? We're going to dare Karl-Anthony Towns to shoot threes over us. And what I mean by that is just like leave him open and play off him. When you close to him, right, you're not running him off the line. You're closing to him. You're willing. That never happens and never will happen because he's a totally different level of offensive weapon than Julius Randle. So, like, that part of it is stupid. The part of it of like, oh, like those guys were so tough. Like Dante and Julius Randle were so tough. Like, I mean, I guess, like, I don't know. Like, what is toughness? I'm always mind boggled by this conversation because to me, toughness is like, do you show up for your team? Do you play through injuries when you need to? And are you there consistently? Are you there? Do I want you in my foxhole? And like Dante, I would give all that too. He definitely has played through injury. He definitely competes hard. You know, I question his defense. I don't think his defense is good, to be quite honest. But like, I don't question his toughness.
Yeah, it's not an effort thing from Dante. He just has short arms, and he's not.
No,
he's undersized.
And so like, yeah, he's a tough guy. I think Towns is pretty tough, man. Towns has played through he definitely was playing through an injury to start this year, no matter what Stephon Bondi wants to fucking put out there that Towns showed up out of shape and now he's played himself into shape. Shut up. That's bullshit. And like, yeah, Randall is physically tough when he wants to be, when he's motivated, when it suits him. He's certainly tough physically when he has the ball in his hands, but is he like, and I would never question, he's always there. He's willing to play through injuries for better or worse. But is he mentally tough? Is he somebody that I trust in the biggest moments? Is he somebody that I want in my locker room all the time? Is he somebody that I feel like has a positive energy and vibe and brings something to the team consistently? Like, no. Like anybody that says otherwise is a joke. Like, I'm sorry. We all watched the 21-22 season. That was an entire year of Julius Randle acting like a fucking pampered baby. That's what it was. It was a full season of that. And we can all do like the Men in Black fucking will flash in front of our eyes and we won't remember it at all. But like, that's bullshit. Like nobody, like this whole fucking reminiscing of Julius Randle that has occurred in various points since the trade is bullshit. Nobody forget the 20. Fine. Let's pretend the 21-22 season ever existed. The 22-23 season, All-Star, All-NBA. What did you think of him after that season? I fucking hated him because he played like a joke in that Miami series. And like, oh, his ankle was hurt. Like, okay, well then one, either sit the fuck down if that's the best way you can play. Or two, like, I'm sorry, your ankle being hurt, I don't want to fucking hear it. I don't want to hear it because you're on the floor, you're choosing to do that, and the shit you are doing has nothing to do with your ankle being hurt. Oh, you're playing defense like a fucking idiot because your ankle is hurt? You just have no idea where Kevin Love is standing because your ankle is hurt? You're watching the play. You're watching Miami run on a fast break and throwing your hands up and acting frustrated because your fucking ankle is hurt? That's bullshit. It's a cop-out. That's means absolutely nothing to me. It means absolutely nothing. And I think it's unfortunate that we didn't get to see Julius Randle be healthy for the Knicks in the 2024 playoffs, or that team in general be healthy for the 2024 playoffs, because I do believe they had a chance to win a championship that year, even with all my concerns with Julius Randle. But like, we didn't see it. And at that point, like you mentioned, Isaiah Hartenstein's gone. You got to make a move. And so like, I'm sorry. I don't really buy this idea that like we should all miss Randle and that, since then, what is this is another conversation. What is the identity of the team now? I don't know. The identity of the team is that they're really fucking good. Is that a good identity? It feels like a good identity. Like, hey, what would you say the Knicks are good at? Like, I don't know. They're good at offense. They're good at defense. I like this identity. I think it's a good identity. I think I would encourage more teams to embrace such an identity of being good at both ends of the basketball floor. But like, I find the entire conversations about trade and Karl Anthony Towns, especially this year, so ludicrous. Even if you think me and Stacy are fucking idiots for suggesting that Karl Anthony Towns has been better this season than Jalen Brunson, um, I think any sane Knicks fan would have to look at the play of Karl Anthony Towns over the last 2 years, and like, I just genuinely don't know how anybody is like, oh, if I give you a chance to hit the redo button, you're gonna do it. Like, oh yeah, give me Dante back, give me Randall back. Like, I think if you would do that, I 100% never want you to run the New York Knicks. Like, you 100% should not do that because you're fucking stupid. And two, like, I really would like love to look into your brain. Like, I would love to like look into your brain, specifically the parts of it that contain memory, and see what you remember from like the 21-22 NBA season, the 2022-23 NBA playoffs. Like, do you remember Julius Randle threatening an assistant coach? Do you remember Julius Randle getting pissed at Emmanuel quickly for trying to help him avoid a technical foul? Do you remember Julius Randle? I mean, we're talking about these. You remember the fucking 2021 playoffs? And like, I get it. Like, Atlanta kind of outclassed us. Fine, it happens. He was moping around in that series too. He's moping around. Oh, I can't make shots, so I'm gonna mope around and act like a fucking baby and not do anything defensively. And I'm also gonna have fucking 35 usage and have a 42 true shooting. Like, I'm sorry, all that stuff is it matters. It counts in the equation. Karl Anthony Towns had better moments in one playoff run than Julius Randle had in his career. And like, please miss me with, Julius played so well for the Timberwolves against the Lakers and the fucking and the Warriors. Like, oh, really? He played well against the fucking Warriors, who did not have Steph Curry and basically were running like a fucking Green Grove retirement community out there in the front court. Like, really? Like, that's supposed to move me? Like, the Warriors were defending him with Jimmy Butler. The fucking Lakers, whose biggest challenge for him in the front court was like Rui Hachimura or 40-year-old LeBron James, whose defensive effort basically exists for like 1 month a year at this point. Fuck off. I think again, anybody that wants to redo that trade should, one, get a lobotomy. Two, don't donate your brain to science.
Would you rather, would you rather live as a monster or die as a good man?
Yes. Well, I'd rather live as a monster.
You got the reference, right? You're a Scorsese guy.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not, that trade should be very. You can argue, does Cat make you a title contender? That's its whole separate thing. But from where the Knicks were,
it's not a separate. Are they a contender this year? Like, it's a yes or do you think they're a contender this year? If you think yes, okay. Well, we have the answer to our question. Like, we have the answer to the question. If the Knicks buy like,
there's an argument the Knicks were a contender with Randall too, or they could have been.
Yeah, but that team was never coming back. Isaiah Hartenstein was gone. And Mitchell Robinson played what, like fucking 17 games last year? You would have been fortunate with what you had available to you. You would have been lucky to be like 500 by the time Mitchell Robinson came back. You would have been lucky because the defense would have been that bad. And let's not forget, Randall was coming off his own shoulder thing. And I know he had a good year last year, so I'm not trying to downplay that. But I'm saying, like, you had injury concerns there too. So like, not like, I think it's very straightforward. By definition, I think if you make, like, the Knicks did not have some Mickey Mouse path to the Eastern Conference Finals last year, right? They beat the Pistons in 6, and I think the Pistons, by basically any measure, by the end of last year, were a top 8-ish team in the league. They beat them in 6 games. They beat the Celtics in 6 games. And they were up 3-1 before Jason Tatum ruptured his Achilles. So fucking miss me with the whole, like, oh, Tatum got hurt. Okay, fuck you. I mean, apparently we don't get that excuse ever, so I'm not giving it to anybody. And you lost in 6 to the Pacers, who lost in 7 to the OKC Thunder. Like, I think it's fair to say that team was a contender last year. I think that's fair to say. And I think it's fair to look at their resume this year and say they're a contender. And if I took Karl Anthony Towns off this team and I replaced him with, I don't know, fucking, who's the most average center you could think of? If I replaced him with Ivica Zubac, who I think is like a good center, like a legit good center, do you think this team is a contender? I don't think there's a fucking shot. I don't think there's a fucking shot that they're a contender.
They're probably they're like 4 or 5 seed, maybe. They're not beating.
And I think Zubac is good. Like, this is not like I think Zubac can be on a contender. I want to be very clear about that. But he would not replace Karl Anthony Towns and we become a contender.
Or remain a contender.
I just, and look, I would be lying if I said I haven't, waffled at times on Cat and I'm not sure, should the Knicks look to move him? But you have to give the guy a lot of credit for like coming through a lot of adversity in his personal life for sure. But he gets criticized all the time. Like, it felt, especially like last year and the start of this year, anytime something went wrong, it was all about Karl Anthony Towns. Oh, we lost a game. Karl Anthony Towns couldn't play defense. Oh, we lost to the Pistons. Karl Anthony Towns did this, didn't do that, whatever it was. And he's had to shoulder that. He's had to shoulder it from his coach, right? Mike Brown was shitting on him publicly, like more or less, throughout much of the season. And he didn't tune him out. He actually internalized the type of messages that Brown was selling to him, the changes that he was trying to get from Karl Towns, the things he wanted him to get better at. And it's not perfect, but we've seen those improvements. And this is a guy, let's not forget, who played center for most of his career before he suddenly had to move to the 4 to accommodate Rudy Gobert. And then he gets traded to the Knicks to play the 5. And then when it's like, okay, we're going to mix in lineups with you and Mitchell Robinson at the 4, or with you at the 4. And now this year, like, I know that people act like his role is basically the same. And I can't tell you how much I disagree with that. Like, I think he has so much more responsibility this year. His decision-making is so much more multivariable. There's more things that there's more options there's on his decision tree. Trying to figure out what the proper nerd way to put this is. But like, he has more options in every decision he makes. And I think that was a big adjustment for him. And he has adjusted now. And it's still not perfect. I think there's still stuff that he can get better at. We know that, but he deserves just a ton of credit for it. Yeah, especially with the defense. And especially to like be this impactful while he has struggled, I think, with health and how that's impacted him in terms of his shooting and finishing at the rim. Like, he deserves a ton of credit. So look, I can't say enough about how impressed I've been with Karl Anthony Towns this year and how little I care that Julius Randle is gone off this team and that Dante DiVincenzo is gone off this team. Like, yeah, like, again, like I've argued, I think Julius Randle is the second best Knick of this kind of millennium after Brunson. But
wouldn't he be third best now?
Well, yeah, I guess you could say third best. I think it's fair to say, yeah. But and I don't miss him
too, right?
Yeah, but I don't miss him. And Dante, like, good player. Great time to, you always talk about trading high. People love to, they love to jerk off GMs that, he cashed in at peak value. Okay. Well, when do you think Dante's value was at its peak? Is it now? No. It's definitely not now with less than a year. He's going to be an expiring contract basically next season. So definitely not now. And he's been worse in Minnesota than he was in New York. So like, they cashed in on him off a career season, and they cashed in on him after a season that he played a role he was never going to have again. He was never going to have that role again. Starting 2 guard, put up as many fucking threes as you possibly can. That was never going to happen for him again. They cashed in on him at the right time. I think that's, honestly, I think I would call it a home run trade. If you want to be upset about that, fine. We can call it a really beautiful triple of a trade. But I think the Knicks did great, and I am thankful that they made the trade that they did make.
Yeah, I mean, I think what people would say is did you need to make the Bridges trade, right? But that's the trade I think where you and I would both say we'll have to see how it shakes out. I think you've made a lot of good arguments, namely the contract, in terms of why the pick cost was that high. We only had to give up one pick for Cat, right? And it's not like Randall was some crazy positive asset, especially coming into the contract year. And DiVincenzo was a positive one, but it was also Bridges' contract. But, some might say that if we had been able to keep Devo, would it be made more sense to, replace if you only make the Cat trade and you don't trade for Bridges, you replace Devo and instead give the Wolves a couple picks, right? Then you keep some of your picks. I think Bridges is a better player than Devo, but you would probably still have come out net with more picks and a pretty good shooting guard. But I do have to say, and obviously we still lost to Indiana last year, but Dante's lack of length next to Brunson was exposed in that playoffs. He still had a good playoffs overall, but some of those games he really got cooked. He had a great performance against Maxey, but Indiana, he was less effective on defense. And I think it would have been even more pronounced last year when they had so many guys. There's really, it's tough to, we needed more wing defense. I think that was a big part of why they got Bridges. And it didn't work out last year, obviously against Indiana. But I don't think we beat, if you replace Bridges with Dante, I don't think we beat Boston last year.
I don't think we beat Detroit.
I think the offense would have been better against Detroit. And I think the key to that series, I don't think was
the reason I don't agree with this is Dante is a guy, great, nice playoffs for us in 2024. I think it's fair to say that neither the Sixers nor the Pacers were particularly imposing defensive teams. Detroit and Boston were different level opponents than those two teams. And they were opponents that take away, the Pistons especially are great at taking away the three ball and forcing you to go inside. And Bridges was awesome in that series. He had really big moments, really big stretches, and whatever. There's no, obviously there's no way to prove I'm right or you're right. So we'll have to agree to disagree. But yeah, I don't think there's a question they'd definitely lose the fucking Celtics series without him.
Yeah. So, and me and you have different opinions on the Pistons too. But yeah, that was an identity change. And look, that's part of it. Part of it is, we have a 6'1" player who needs to be who's not, who's just going to always be a minus defender. I do actually think Brunson's defense has picked up quite a bit. I think the charges do not make up for all the other things that he takes off the table on defense. But they also get dismissed too easily, and he leads the league in charges taken. So he competes, and but you're going to need to have length next to him, and that length matters, and that length has mattered more because Bridges is not highly visible at point of attack, and because he's not physical on defense. I think a lot of what he just does just by existing and being there and being a 6'7" guy, that when you're driving and kicking or you're making some kind of a play, you're reading the floor, that's another 7-foot wingspan you have to account for. So overall, and look, you say maybe if they don't win a championship, was this a failure? I don't know. Maybe Brown ends up being not the best hire. But and maybe the picks were too much ultimately for Bridges. Maybe you could have kept them. Even the Cat trade, I don't think at that time, I think to your point, it was a good trade. I think some people might bring up that if they knew Randall was going to get hurt, could they have traded for Siakam, right? They've moved Randall for Siakam, and maybe Siakam would be a slightly better fit. I don't know that Siakam at the 5 full time would make this. I don't know if you have the 6th best defensive team. I also don't know how great the fit with Mitch works. We might have been in the same position where we're looking for a stretch. How many times do we talk about this team with a stretch 5 would look so much better? Randall and Mitch aren't necessarily the best fit. And the beauty of it is they're still I mean, Mitch still leads the league in offensive rebounding, and Cat is pretty high up there as well. And the Knicks as a team are, and that's the last thing I'll say is like what those trades have given them, and what I think what they've been moving towards is they have many different ways to beat you. It isn't going to look exactly the same, but they can get you on the glass. They can generate high quality shots and go 5 out. They can play double big. They can play fast with the bench, right? They still have the option, as much as he hasn't looked quite the same, they still have the option to have Brunson put on the cape and take over at the end of games. He's still one of the best isolation options in the league. And so they have many different buttons to press, and they've been pressing them. And that's, and Cat and Bridges have been important parts of that. We should talk about Bridges because he's in the middle of an extended slump, has not looked good. I think his slumps look worse because, he can disappear from games. He doesn't force himself on games the same way some other players have. And I think as a team-wide philosophy, like there's been games where Cat, Brunson, and Bridges have all only had like 4 or 5 shots, because I think part of it is to like take what the defense is giving you and move the ball. And there's an understanding that you're not going to, even if you're one of the stars, you're not going to get that kind of usage up every game, but it sticks out more with Bridges. But I'm curious your thoughts there, because I think a lot of people, and I think James L. Edwards III from The Athletic posted that, starting lineup change is being considered. And if it were to happen, it would be Bridges, not Hart, which I think is more than fair. Look, Hart, on the one hand, Hart seems to be the most visible thing that's off with that lineup because teams will put a center on him. But he has found ways to be productive. He's on both ends. Like last year, we were pissed also because the defensive effort wasn't there. You can't really question that this year. He has a space cadet moment. But generally, he's been playing really well on defense. But, are you concerned about Bridges at this point? Do you think that would be the right starting lineup change, maybe especially when Deuce comes back, to have Bridges be the 6th man? Curious to take on that whole situation.
Well, one, I don't think Bridges is getting benched. I think it's like ultimately, like, I think this is our starting lineup and we should just accept it. And Mike Brown seems to have accepted it, and he's just trying to figure out his best way to work the rotations around it. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe James Edwards III is correct, and there'll be a lineup change, and it would be Mikal Bridges and Deuce would come in or whatever. I don't believe it. I'll believe it when I see it. Am I worried about him? Like, yeah. Like, the guy's just not been able to hit a shot for a while right now. Even last night, the Knicks put up 132. Everybody's going off. It feels like in that starting lineup. Hart had, 33, 32, whatever it was. Towns had 20 plus. OG had 28, I think. Like, Alvarado had a huge game. Like, they were all going off, and Bridges just not part of it. But I'm also like, he's certainly got the yips a little bit right now, where he's doubting himself. He's not sure. He's not playing with instinct. He's not playing quick. He's hesitating constantly. There's still plenty of time here before the postseason to sort that out. They've got 12 games. And ultimately, I trust the body of work. I trust the career. And whatever you think of Bridges, I think it's fair to say he's playing well below what he's shown in his career offensively. But the big thing is defensively, he's still been really good. I have not had a problem with his defense at all. And that wasn't the case last year. Felt like last year it was, his shot's not going in, then his defense would lag. And there were just stretches of the season where you were like, man, the defense has been terrible. Again, aside from that 2-9 stretch where everybody was terrible on defense, I haven't felt that way. I think Bridges has been there pretty consistently every night on the end of the floor. And yeah, look, he desperately needs to make shots. That's just what it is. He has to make shots. But I don't see any reason to doubt that he will ultimately turn it around, because the career numbers are what they are. But if you're concerned, like, there's nothing to, what can anybody say to that? Like, deservedly, people should be concerned because it's been bad, and it's been bad for a little while. and he just looks so passive and so unsure of himself. Yeah, like I understand it, but I'm not fully there yet. I think he will turn it around. And, the main thing again for me is he's still doing a lot of the things that you kind of need him to do, right? On the defensive end of the floor and stuff like that. So, um, that's good. And then obviously Mike Brown has been not scared to sit him down the stretch of games when he feels like he doesn't have it. Is that ideal? No, obviously, ideally, you just want Bridges to be going and you don't have to think about that. But the fact that Brown is comfortable doing that, I think speaks well to him as a coach. And I think it speaks to like the way this team needs to be coached to win a championship because their closing five on any given night, I think should and probably will fluctuate, especially those wing positions. And we've seen him not close with Hart. We've seen him not close with Bridges. We've seen him not close with Towns earlier this season. So I'm not that concerned about it for all those reasons, but I would not knock anybody that is concerned.
Yeah, it's fair. I mean, I think there were stretches of probably worse play last year. And like I said, I think his playoff performance was underrated. And, he's got to get back into it. I mean, they need more from him than this if they want to beat, the top teams. Yeah, I think I would agree with what you said. And, the picks are always going to be the picks. He's going to get judged even more harshly than Cat as a result of that. And the fact that he isn't the most, but I do think over the course of the year, he's been a little bit incrementally better, still not as much as you'd like, but there's very few times where it's like he has a path to the rim and then he takes that fadeaway, which is the one I think it was Indiana or late against Boston in a big game they lost, where he had a fast break. Sorry. He had a fast break and he, fades away when he's 6'7", right? I think he's been better about avoiding that. I think he's not avoiding that, attacking the rim more, not all the time, but especially on fast breaks. He's going for dunks, more willing to take a layup when he has the lane. So, stylistically, there's been those incremental improvements, and that might be all we need because this team is loaded and they have a lot more. The last thing I wanted to ask a little bit about, this is probably a minor thing, but Jordan Clarkson, after being out of the rotation, has given the Knicks some energy in a couple of games. Particularly when Brunson's out, they really need scoring, right? They don't have any real perimeter creators besides him. And then, there's games where Alvarado has been up and down, but when he's been in a funk, Clarkson gives you, he gives you more scoring than a guy like Kolek. Just when the offense is in a rut, he can kind of just hit tough shots, right? But both you and I have spoken very highly of Mohamed Diawara, and Mike Brown said yesterday Clarkson has probably leaped Diawara in the rotation. I think we've both said also that like the rotation isn't as set in stone. And he probably will, there'll be nights there will probably be nights where Clarkson might make more sense than Diawara. But what's your read on that? And the other thing I'll mention is, do you think either of those guys, do you think we go to 9 guys in the playoffs? If we do, that means one of those guys is out of the rotation, right? So but Diawara obviously gives you some size that no one else, like Shamet, doesn't. And Clarkson gives you a little bit more dynamism that nobody besides Brunson really gives you off the dribble. So curious what your thoughts on that are.
I don't really care about it. That's it. I mean, thoughts on it, I don't care. He's given Mohamed Diawara more minutes than anybody would have expected coming into the season. He has shown that he's willing to pull guys from a rotation, put them back in the rotation. I don't think it's bad for Diawara to get pulled from the rotation. He's had a couple of rough outings. Sometimes that can be good for your growth. And like we already saw this, right? Like, oh my God, they signed Jeremy Sohan. We're never going to see Diawara again. And within like 3 games, it was like, okay, Diawara's back in the rotation. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about it. I think anybody that's worried about it is kind of clowning themselves. feels like something you'd be worried about just because you're freaking out for absolutely no reason. The Knicks now on FanDuel, they're now back to up to third in the best odds in the conference. They're at plus 440, the Cavs at plus 280, the Celtics at plus 180, and the Pistons at plus 480. I don't fully understand the Cavs hype, the Celtics hype at least kind of can wrap my brain around it. The Cavs hype, I don't get it, but maybe James Harden is going to figure it out in the playoffs this time around. Who knows? Other than that, I don't know. Is there anything else? I guess we can talk about, or not talk about it, but just worth mentioning. The NBA is supposed to expand now 2 teams by 2028, 29, I believe, or 2029 anyway. The one is in Vegas, one is in Seattle, no likelihood. Expansion's fine. I don't care about it. I'm not sure that we need 2 more teams, but cool, whatever. I got to say, man, Vegas, I think, is an interesting choice because Vegas does not seem... It's not a great time to be in Vegas. Let's put it that way. I'm not sure Vegas can support all these sports teams they're putting there either. I find that very weird, but who knows?
Well, to that, I mean, I guess Orlando would be the model, right? I think Orlando has a lot of tickets they sell to people visiting, right, for tourism's sake, and then so people, you're in Vegas, you're seeing shows, you're seeing all of that. And then you have the gambling element. I think Seattle was absolutely robbed, especially moving here and seeing, especially the aftermath of the Super Bowl and, and the Mariners being good this year. It's an awesome sports town. And I even more than before, I think it's bullshit that they lost their team. So it's a no-brainer. It's a big market. People are passionate about sports. There's a big basketball culture here. And I think people were discussing this. Without a doubt, it should be the Sonics. That should be the team name. Gary Payton and Sean Kemp need to have their jerseys retired on day one. I think Vegas, you get why they're doing it. There's been a boom. I think a lot of people have moved there. It brings up, given the gambling controversies that the NBA has been going through recently, that brings up some interesting things, just the general culture and nightlife there. If that's a place where you want your 21, 22-year-olds to be going every, whenever they play there or be there full time, those could be questions worth answering. What I think from the economic standpoint, it makes sense. I think the wild card in a city I'm really interested in someday, if they actually move there, or move a team there or create a new team there, is Mexico City. Someone did a Tableau dashboard showing the market size, and Seattle was the largest one, I think, of potential markets. And number 2, I thought would be Vegas, but it was actually Mexico City in terms of NBA fan base, because it's a huge city. And when I went there, there's a lot of people wearing Lakers jerseys, and there's a lot of people have family in California and all that. And it's it's a neighbor, and they can watch all the games in time zone. So that would be the other one I'd be interested to see if they go to Mexico City at any point.
Yeah, be interesting to see if they do that. We'll be interested to see how many countries want to do anything with America in the future moving forward. But that's neither here nor there.
If you depose the head of a country, apparently they beat you not depose. If you remove the head of a country, apparently they beat you in the World Baseball Classic. So
there you go. Congrats to Venezuela.
Before we get out of here, I did want to ask, do you have Final Four picks?
I have not even looked at a bracket. I'm going to fill one out later tonight.
Who do you think is going to win it all?
Michigan. Sure. Why not?
All right. Well, you haven't looked at a bracket? All right.
No. I'm so checked out on college ball, man.
The 1 year that's the best one in Michigan history.
What can I say? I'm a consistent person. All right. Stacy, that's a good place to end this. Let the people know where they can find you and plug anything you'd like to plug.
You can find me at StacyPenn89. I'll just plug all the great work at the Strickland. I believe we had a Strictly NFL pod that came out with Constantine this a few days ago. So if you want to catch up on all free agency and everything, great source. So yeah, there's no real off season anymore. So highly recommend that and all the other great work at the Strickland.
I echo those sentiments. It's a really good pod. I'm not going to plug myself, so I'll just plug all that. And I'll plug our sponsor, FanDuel. Thank you to them. That is our show for today. I hope everybody has a great evening. I hope everybody enjoys their college basketball the next 4 days. And I will see you all on Friday. Peace.